First, they came for the Jews. I didn't speak out because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for the communists. I didn't speak out because I wasn't a communist. Then they came for the trade unionists. I didn't speak out because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for me. There was no one left to speak for me. Pastor Niemöller, victim of Hitler's Nazis. And then they came for me. Then they came for me. Then they came for me.
They came for me because I'm Mensi, singer in the Angelic Upstarts. Fascists attacked me here. They intended this to be my final gig. They wanted me to stop playing because I've always been an anti-fascist. At the same time, they were attacking a variety of bands with working class followers, including big names like the Pogues and Desmond Dekker. This was part of a wider plan by the extreme right to influence the music scene by terror. Luckily, there was someone to speak out for me. Anti-Fascist Action sorted it out, and I'm still playing. AFA, as we're known, is not a protest group. We're not in the business of complaining about Nazis, we're in the business of stopping them. Inevitably, this means confronting them on the streets. AFA was set up in 1985 to revive the militant anti-fascist tradition. Our original aims were drawn up on the back of a beer mat, and they stated that the purpose of the new organisation was to confront the fascists, both physically and ideologically. For the media, the rise of the far right in Europe is something that happened overnight. Monsieur Le Pen, the leader of the French National Front, by being allowed to use the issue of racism, is now setting the political agenda. Surrounded by women in Chanel suits, his image is as artificial as his glass eye. The original street fighters have now been joined by the middle classes. The first stage has been lost in France.
They haven't seen anything about race yet till we get going.
That's quite enough of that. This is the British National Party, who are currently the main party of the extreme right here. We've stopped them talking in this film for the same reasons as we're trying to stop them on the streets. We've learned from our experience that the greater freedom they are allowed, their influence, and the worse their subsequent behaviour. Their policy of repatriation tomorrow encourages violent racial hatred today. In Britain, there are 70,000 racist attacks a year, of which Tower Hamlets in East London has the highest ratio. It is no coincidence that this is the area of London that the BNP concentrate their energy. In the general election, they received 2,500 votes in this borough, using the battle cry, "Rights for Whites." Obviously, this was a conscious vote for their agricultural policy. Clearly, for a growing minority of the white working class who have been betrayed by all the mainstream parties, especially on issues like jobs and housing, the BNP are seen as the only radical alternative. Many governments today dishonestly put the blame for unemployment on immigration. In Germany in the 1930s, the unemployed correctly put the blame on the politicians. Then Hitler began to put the blame on the Jews. Many of those same politicians found it convenient to support him.
Only one thing could have stopped our movement: if our enemies had understood its principle, and from the first day had smashed with utmost brutality the nucleus of our new movement: Adolf Hitler.
In Britain, Hitler's disciple was Sir Oswald Mosely, founder of the British Union of Fascists, otherwise known as the Blackshirts. He used provocative marches through the Jewish areas to control the streets, to impress his establishment backers. The most famous ended in the Battle of Cable Street.
My friend and I, we were both 12, and we decided we'd like to be part of this human wall. And we went along on that day, and there were thousands and thousands of people. At first, the police, they were mounted police. All they tried to do was allow the traffic through. But there were too many people, and they were pushing the people who were in the road onto the curb. There were people being pushed through the plate glass windows of Gardeners, which was the big store on that corner. The police horses were being brought up onto the pavement, and women were falling under the feet of the horses. There were screams, there was blood. Absolutely terrifying for 2 young girls. But we decided to stick it out. We never saw a fascist all day. All the fights were with the police.
Well, then the police had started trying to charge the barricades, and they weren't very successful. We repulsed them. And finally, as they were going back, the women in the buildings above, these sheds and that, started chucking everything that they could lay their hands on, down on the police. Hot water and scraps from kitchens and other things as well. And the police didn't know what to do, and they ran into the sheds and locked themselves in. And then the police was attacking, and one black copper was just about to bounce his truncheon over my nut, and I just stuck out a right hander and he went down. A little bit later, they came out with their hands up, surrendering. Well, who'd ever seen a policeman surrender? We didn't know what to do, so we took their helmets and told them to shove off. And the police battened away and smashed, and mounted police were battering away for 4 solid hours, and they still couldn't drive the people back. And finally, Mosely, who was the leader of the fascist party in those days, the racist party, was forced to withdraw and had to go back. Many of us was arrested. No fascists were arrested. I was sent to prison for 4 months. Many people of my friends were sent to prison as well. And when I was arrested, all these coppers round here decided to help me to the police station. And when they got there, they just picked me up like a battering ram. They didn't open the police station door with a handle. They just opened it by banging my head against the door. When they got me inside, they just started stamping on my head and banging me over the head with truncheons, and I faded from the scene. And when I woke up a couple of hours later, I heard great cheers from all over, because the news had come through that the racists hadn't broken through, and the chief of police had ordered that Mosely couldn't march, or Mosely was the leader of the racists, couldn't march and had to go back.
Tremendous feeling of pride that we were part of all that. For me, that was the beginning of the feeling of anti-fascism, that they shall not pass, and they did not pass that day. I don't think the Jews were so badly attacked as the Asians had been here, partly because the young Jews were quite well organised, but it never was as bitter then. Jews weren't burnt out in their homes the way Asians have been here. It may have been the isolated incidents of being attacked if they met them in the street, or even in their... Sometimes they'd come to their actual homes, but there was none of this burning out and terrible attacks that the Asians have had. Bombs thrown through the doors, the petrol bombs. We never had anything like that.
Fascism is a movement of force against the working class people, irrespective of where they are. Fascism does away with trade unions. Fascism lives on racial hatred. Fascism doesn't believe in the betterment of the conditions of the working people. It is the strong arm of the capitalist system, in my view.